Okay. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for coming out. My name's Sean. This is Nocode Lisboa. We do this once a month. Been doing it for a few years, and this started as a group. NocodeLisboa.com is the website. If you guys aren't already on there, I recommend creating an account because the meetup will eventually go away. They tripled prices, and we're trying to get away from meetup. And then the other thing is that if you make an account on here, like these people, it will actually introduce you to other folks in the community who have complementary skills and interests and all that. So it's pretty cool how it works. So the idea here is really just like demystifying. It started basically, I was teaching no-code tools like Bubble and Webflow and that kind of stuff. And at this point, honestly, I think the AI builder tools have eclipsed no-code to the point where I don't even think it's worth learning Bubble. If I'm starting today, I would recommend learning these tools that we're going to look at. The talk this evening is specifically on something called MCP. Has anyone heard of Model Context Protocol? Are you guys using it in any capacity? The people that nodded, no? Are you using it? Just know it, okay. So we're gonna go into this, and the disclaimer here is that I am not an expert by any means. This is also like bleeding edge technology. This is new stuff. I'm gonna tell you what I know, and my goal really here tonight is just to give you enough understanding of it and enough inspiration that maybe you want to go learn more and play with it. Because yeah, like I said, this is just like bleeding edge stuff. This was released in November. Anthropic, the makers of Claude, put this out there as a standard. So it is a protocol. It's like a handshake, kind of a standard format, but it's a way of getting the LLMs, giving like a standard interface for LLMs to talk to services. So we'll go through why this is important, but if anything, like feel free. This is super casual. You guys just interrupt me if you have a question. I'll do my best to answer everything. As long as you guys understand, like I am not the expert by any means. I used to be a developer many years ago, so I understand the concepts, but like I'm just plodding my way through this stuff like everyone else. So with that, let's get started unless there's any questions. That's really bright. I wonder if I can scoot forward a little bit. Or like duck down, yeah. Just housekeeping stuff. There's a bathroom around the corner. Bar and back. Shout out to Tribe. They're really gracious to let us use this space. Oops. Thanks. So like buy a drink, or they have pizzas back there as well if you're hungry. But they're awesome. They basically let us use this space for free. So shout out to Tribe. Okay, and with that, let's get started. So like I said, MCP, Model Context Protocol, it's the idea very simply that like there's a lot of LLMs emerging, and then there's all these services out there, and we need like a standard way to expose, in the same way that like they realize we need APIs. We need a way for like machines to be able to access web apps and websites. We need this now to make the LLMs like a target customer of applications. So we need some way of consuming and producing, like exposing that information in a way that the LLMs want to interact with easily. So tonight we're going to look at what this is, what this protocol is exactly, how it works, why I think it's pretty important. I think we're kind of at a moment like we were in 2006 with, if anyone remembers the programmable web, like remixing, and like basically when APIs came out, it was kind of like this mushrooming of awesomeness, and people like could make their own custom things, mashups of apps. So I think we're at that moment now where there's gonna be a lot of interesting stuff created using MCP. And then also if you own, like anyone actually like an entrepreneur own a SaaS company or a business. So I think you're gonna be particularly interested in this because the new game, as SEO gets kind of eroded, you look at like Google search traffic. Think about how you guys use Google. Like, I don't know about y'all, but at this point, like Google is not my first step. I'm going to ChatGPT or Claude, and I'm asking the question to figure stuff out, right? So, and we're not the only ones. Everyone's doing that. So Google search traffic is falling off a cliff, and people are trying to like figure out like how do we stay relevant? What do you do when people aren't going to the search results and they aren't clicking through to my website? What happens to me? So, and the answer is make yourself very accessible to the LLM so that you are a citation, and that, that will be the new SEO in a lot of ways. So I'm going to show you how this relates to all that. Okay, so the analogy that I've seen used, and this is, I think, a pretty good one, this image, like a USB-C hub, this is kind of the way to think of MCP. All these device manufacturers just have to support the USB-C standard, and we don't have to worry about making like 1,000 different cables for all the devices that could possibly want to use these things, and all the, like all the laptops and all the devices out there. It would be a nightmare if we didn't have the USB-C standard. And so MCP is seeking to become that, in essence, for like, how do we take all these services, Slack, Gmail, Google Calendar, and plug them into a standard hub that then you just have to connect to that hub if you're an LLM. So yeah, and it exposes it in natural language, which is the way that these LLMs want to interface with it. Shout out, just like if anyone's a podcast listener, this was an excellent interview I heard with the founders, the two guys from Anthropic, the creators of the Model Context Protocol. And so they did a really good job. Like, they're the creators, so you're hearing it straight from the source of what they were thinking and how they think about this stuff. So that's a really good interview that's worth listening to if you're into podcasts. And I will share this. We have a Telegram group for this, so I'll share this. These slides will be in the Telegram group at the end of it. Okay. So why does this matter? There's this thing in software engineering called the M of N problem. And this is basically what we're solving for. So this kind of shows what we're talking about here. We're like, imagine a bunch of different devices and a bunch of different, things that it needs to support. And this would just be chaos if you had to do a custom integration for each one of these things, one-to-one. It's almost like the reverse of Metcalfe's law, if anyone knows this. So this is like when they talk about like, you have the first telephone and it's worthless when there's just one, and now there's two, and it's like you can call one person and now there's five, so that's significantly more interesting. And then every node you add, it gets like exponentially more interesting. So imagine now like this cut in half, and you have like models on one side and services on the other, and think about what happens every time you add a node. It just requires that many more integrations if you don't have something in the middle as the interface. And yeah, I like to draw this parallel about the 2006 moment, because I think that's pretty accurate where we're at. And in the same way that like Mashery and Mashable and Programmable Web and all these directories of like mashups and remixes sprung up, we're going to see that. I guarantee that same thing is going to play out here. So yeah, so we talked about SEO. I mean, not just SEO, like SEO, but also like pay-per-click. Basically, search is going away, right? So what happens when people don't go to Google and they don't click through the blue links? That is impacting a lot of different stuff. Instead, they're turning to things like ChatGPT and Claude. And so the way you make yourself more discoverable and more accessible is you expose your service in the way that they want to interact with you. And in all this stuff, really the end target is agentic AI. Has anyone played with agents, like, or made your own agent? A couple people? Cool. So the idea of an agent, this term is getting thrown around so much. It's sort of like, I feel kind of like cloud, when they just started, like at some point it lost its meaning because everyone's just attaching it and they don't really know what it means anymore. It purely means like acting with agency. So the things that can autonomously run with a goal and make decisions and get to an end state. And so that's what like an agentic AI is. So what you want to do is you want to make these services discoverable, and so they can find them, and if like just figure out like, hey, this is my goal, what MCPs exist that can help me accomplish that, and then call them to enumerate like what can I do with this, what are the capabilities of this thing, and then it's self-documenting. It shows you, okay, then these are the function calls and the resources and the prompts and everything on how to use it. And you might say, like, my logical question was, well, don't we already have APIs? Like, isn't REST, we already have a solution to accessing a web app in a standard way where there's like function calls and a spec, and you can go look up the docs. But this is, I guess the problem with that is it's like having to read a different manual anytime you want to use a different car. Like ideally you want some common standard where it's all like the instructions, like the operations manual is all just in this common expected format. So you only have to know one thing. And that's really what the MCP is seeking to be. So to make this all real, I know we're still talking conceptually right now. They have this demo from Anthropic. So I implemented this and I figured we're not going to step through each step. Like you can go through all this on your own if you want to actually do each step, but I'm going to show you the outcome of all this. Because I basically did all this on my own laptop just to show you what it looks like. So the problem we're solving for, I'm just going to open Claude here. I have Claude Desktop installed on my laptop. So when it loads up right now, I think they also just added this to the web. Like for the longest time, you couldn't use MCP on Claude, the web app. It had to run, like it could only access local MCPs on your desktop, like the file system version. I believe they just added the remote MCP to the web app. So that now exists. But these are two different flavors of it, and I'll explain. But when you load this up, what it's doing in the background, it checks this little manifest file to say, hey, do I have access to any tools? And because I did this tutorial, it now has this weather one down here. If I disable these tools, let's just do that. Let's just disable all tools. And then let's ask it, what's the weather today in Phoenix, Arizona, where I'm from? And Claude's going to come back and it's going to say, well, I'm not a weatherman. I don't have, okay, so it's actually searching the web because it has that enabled. So that's how it's getting this information right now. So this is actually, I think, a new thing of Claude 4. So it said, I don't have access to real-time data, but I do have a web search tool. You see here how they have this. So let me actually, I'm curious. If I disable that now and say, can you give me the weather for San Francisco? Let's see what it says. Okay, so it says, I don't have access to web search or real-time weather data, so I can't provide you with the current weather, blah, blah, blah. So the answer to that is tools. So I'm going to turn back on, well, I'll leave web search disabled so you can see what this means. So let's enable tools. And because I've implemented this MCP, I've implemented basically access to weather.com via this MCP server that's running locally. Then now we're going to ask the question, and we'll say, how about now? Allow. And it forces you to, like, you saw that dialogue, so it actually gave me, do I want to authorize this tool usage, which is good, because you don't want this thing just willy-nilly doing stuff. Okay, so it knew that, hey, he's asking a question about weather. I have access to this weather tool now. I'm going to run the get forecast method, and here it says, here's the weather forecast for San Francisco, blah, 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 and it gives you today, tonight, tomorrow. So that's what it's doing. It's a conduit to get an answer to a question that it can't do because it doesn't natively have any access to real-time data. But what's cool about this is the way that the MCP announces its capabilities. As soon as it's enabled, Claude says, what tools do I have access to? Oh, I've got this weather one. So it can, what can I do with that? Oh, I can get forecasts. I can get weather alerts. So it knows then the capabilities on the first cycle. So what basically the sequence here of what it's doing is it's saying, Claude's saying, what MCPs do I have? Oh, I've got a weather one. Okay, great. What are the capabilities of the weather one? Great. How do I use it? And then on that third call, it's actually running get forecast, which is this. And you can actually, when you roll it out like this, you can see it demands a latitude, longitude. So it had to actually know that. So it figured that out. I guess it has maybe the latitude and longitude of San Francisco already, like from its training. But it then gets that latitude, longitude, passes it in, and then it gets a response back. Here is the forecast. And so that's what it's then giving us down below. So any questions on that example?
So that response that comes in JSON format
Yep.
is standardized no matter what the question is when it comes to weather. And that's sort of the value of it, that it comes back in a standardized format.
It's standardized. It's dictated by this script. So when this is the tutorial, like I just created this, I think it's Python, and I can even show you where it is here on my computer. Well, actually, let's do this. I want to also show you just the value of this thing being separate, because like MCPs are a client server thing. So when we create an MCP server, Claude has its own MCP client so it can access it, but also so does Cursor. So let's look at the same thing in Cursor.
Because if it was built into your own app, then that standardized JSON format, you can then build your own agent, right? To then
You can,
information out.
well, you know that because this thing is going to return this.
Yeah.
Or, well, that's the alert version here. Where is it?
Okay.
Yeah, so it's going to return,
Yeah.
where is it? This. So for a period, give me the temperature, wind, and forecast. So, and it's going to give it back as JSON. So you can expect that that is going to come back from this MCP, but it's dictated. It's not like a standard universal. It's dictated by this code. Yeah. Yeah. But let's just look at this. Like, so this is my cursor. And if I go to the settings in here, I've got this same weather MCP enabled. And so you can see that I asked it over here previously, can you tell me the weather in Phoenix, Arizona? You see here it says called MCP tool, gave it the latitude, longitude, blah, 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 and it got back the forecast. So totally separate clients using the same MCP server.
Does the MCP server requires API server on the weather.com?
Yeah, that's what this is doing here. So if you look,
Can you interact directly with a website that doesn't have an API, for instance?
so there's like browser use. You're saying like, can you have it just act like a web browser and go out to a random website?
This is if you want to interact with the Amazon.com, scraping the prices and.
Yeah. Well, specific. So if you wanted to like generically emulate a browser, that's one thing. If you wanted to go like, go hit Amazon's website and extract a certain expected format of things, pass in certain variables and get back the page and then extract like the price and the description and that stuff, that would be like writing a custom MCP to do that. Two different things, right? So yeah. Okay.
Did you install only once the MCP server and then, right, you install it only once, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So on the cursor side, how was it made aware of it?
Yeah, let me show you. So when you register this, it's just this MCP JSON file, and you're saying, okay, MCP servers, enumerate what we got. We've got one called weather. The command to invoke it is Node, because it's a Node.js. This one is TypeScript. It's actually not Python. So maybe it's actually, I think I implemented it two different ways. So actually, I'm actually, let me make sure I'm telling you guys the right thing here. Let's look at this one. So Claude, if you go into its settings, you have to enable the developer mode to get this tab. And then this is the equivalent there. It says it's running. And this one is a Python. So I actually did two different servers. Okay, so I'm lying. There's same tutorial implemented two different ways. So technically not invoking the same MCP, but it was just two different implementations of the same thing. But this is the directory where it lives. So if I go to users, Sean, Python projects, it's weather here. Let's go to this. This is the file. So let's open that in Cursor. And this is the file from the tutorial. Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's look at another example. So I think I updated Cursor, and I maybe don't have this installed because I'm not seeing it right now, but this will be a good excuse to see if we can add it and if it'll work. So anyone here use Supabase as a database? It's just one of these database services. It's kind of like Airtable, but it's a little more complex. So they have an MCP. So let's go find their official MCP server here, Cursor. And so it's saying personal access token. Okay. I don't want to do API tokens on here because we're recording it. But basically, you can go here, install the Supabase MCP, and then in Cursor, it now then can query your database in the agentic mode. If we try to do it right now, I'm not actually connected to a database. But if you're working in a project that has a database, let me actually go find one. I may already have this set up in another one. Let's see here. Let's look at this one. Yeah, so these are set up project specific. You can see that I have a different, so Supabase is enabled on this project. Let me just turn it on so it's running. And now, well, here, let's turn it off first. This is a project, so I built this thing called Lunch Mixer that we use to coordinate lunches amongst the Lisbon digital nomads. It's a Slack bot, and I did it all in Cursor and using Supabase. But then they came out with the Supabase MCP, and it made life so much easier developing it. So I just want to demonstrate how that works. And you can see, like, here's my last session where I'm doing stuff in the agent in Cursor. So I'm just going to ask it, like, can you query the database and show me a list of past lunches? And it should fail because this is not running. Or it's going to say, what do I have access to? I don't have the ability to do that. Oh, so it's actually trying to make a command and execute it via npx. Supabase. Yeah, so, and it's in agent mode, so it's like, that didn't work. I'm going to try something else. That didn't work. Let me try something else. So I'm going to stop it here. And now let's enable the Supabase MCP. Not sure why it's not starting up. Let's see. Let's just see what it does. Can you query the database? Here, let's just use the exact same command. Oops. Query the see what it does. Okay, see, it says called MCP tool. And it wrote, so it figured out how to do this. It basically figured out the SQL and return the list of results. And this is the development database, so it's pulling, like, there's not all the data from the production database. But it pulled one. It shows one record here. So yeah, so there you go. Here's an example of just like a connector that lets you interact in real time with the database. And like the reason this is so cool is that in the context of when you're like, you know, you're in Cursor and you're giving it a goal and you're saying, hey, I want you to build this thing, go, you know, add this new feature to the thing. It can then literally go talk to the database on its own, figure out like what tables are there, what records are in the tables, like, can I add something, add a field, whatever. It can do all that all on its own. So this is like the power of this whole agentic stuff. Like it's not as important when you're like, when it's not in agent mode and you're just doing things one at a time, it's like not all that big of a win. But when you just want to give it a goal and say, go and figure this out, then it's really powerful. So sorry if that wasn't like a super compelling instance of it, but yeah, so that's the super base example though. Any questions on that one? Okay. All right. Well, I was thinking maybe we just try to do one of these live. I don't know if we guys want to like just take a shot at this. It's like I learn a lot. I think it's fun, and it's also just instructive because you see like it's not glossy and perfect. It's like you see the nitty gritty of like actually working with this stuff, which I think is actually useful. So yeah. So let's just pick something like a public API. Think of something we might want to do, like some public information we'd want to access, and let's make an MCP server for it. And I can suggest stuff if no one has any suggestion. What? Yeah, I mean, there's like stock tickers and crypto prices and like leaderboards and stuff that's out there that we can probably hit. I know Coin Market Cap has an open one. Actually, this could be instructive. So mcphub.io is an instance of this thing called MCP Compass, which is an open source project, but they run it out there. And this is a directory of, they say, 250 plus servers. So you can just ask it, like, I want to get current cryptocurrency prices. And so here it finds CoinCap MCP. So let's go look at this project. And here, this one has a Docker file, which this actually could be instructive. The README here, so it tells you this is what it does. You add this configuration to your Claude desktop, and then they have a nice way of installing it. Actually, this is a good opportunity to talk about an important topic here with regards to security. So this stuff is so bleeding edge that a lot of people are just kind of willy-nilly playing with it and not like putting proper guardrails around it. And so you have to be aware that like people are just making random MCPs, throwing it in a GitHub repo out there, and then others are installing that and giving it root level file permissions on their laptop, which is actually a terrible idea if you think about what it's doing, because it's literally, it's like granting root access to an intern and then saying, oh yeah, run any command, do whatever you want to do. Like, that's a terrible idea. So the right way to do this is actually to run it in a container and give it very restricted access and permissions. And that's like the bare minimum, but realistically, you should also probably be like putting guardrails around it and like locking down permissions and, you know, doing like proper sanitization of the stuff. For this case, this is a good opportunity. Let's just do this one. Let's see if we can get the Docker file. Get this one working via Docker. There's a trick we can try here. I don't know if this is going to work. Has anyone used bolt.new, that service for building stuff? Yeah. So they have a cool thing where you can actually just preface any GitHub repo with bolt.new, and it should build it for you and just make it work. So importing GitHub repository, installing dependencies, I'm ready to assist you. Okay, so now let's see if this works. So we want to invoke this thing. So let's see what we have to do here. Oh, and we need to. Okay. Get started. Add this to your Claude config. Okay. So we're going to go into our Claude. We go here, edit config. And let's add this. Oh, whoops. So that needs to be here. I think, oh wait, did I do that right? I probably screwed that up, hold on. So we're going to add it here, I think. Yeah. Okay, let's see if this
I think it
doesn't.
just wants a comma.
Comma after this. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so now, but we need to point it at. So I'd rather not install this via npx. I'm trying to show the Docker-based installation. So if they have it, let's see. So now if we have it deployed here, the question is, I guess maybe we have to deploy it to Netlify. Let's do that. No such file directory. So let's see, retry. Readme. I wonder if they have, let's see if they've got one on Docker Hub, because that's easy to do. Hub.docker. Okay, here's one. I actually don't know if this is the same project, but it does the same thing, it looks like. So let's do this. I'm going to grab this string. I'm going to open Docker. I have Docker running locally on my Mac. Does everyone know what Docker? This is a containerization. It's a way to like run self-contained little servers, but they're not like a virtual machine. It's like a stripped down version where you give it a recipe and it builds a stack. So here, if we look for it here, and then we say, let's pull this. So in the background now, it's going out to that repository. It's pulling it down locally to our laptop. And then if we do run, it should just start it. Let's see. Containers. Okay, so here it is. So it says it's running. And let's see where. Find mounts. Is anyone a developer? This is where my true So it's running locally now on my laptop. I guess we need to figure out how to, like, where it's accessible now, though.
It's like
I think it's
port
88.
Port 8000? Where'd you see that? 8080?
Yeah.
Where are you guys looking? Oh, yeah, here we go. There you go. Boom. Okay, so if we do then localhost port 8080, let's see if we can hit it. Nope. Well, metrics. Well, it may be there, and let's see metrics. Nope. Okay. I'll do it the NPX way because I don't know what we're doing wrong right now in Docker, and I want you guys to at least see how it works. So let's install it the less safe way.
We could just try ask Claude. If you copied that terminal prompt in and just said to Claude, what can I do now to see the response?
Oh yeah, good idea. Great idea. Yeah, I guess this is a good lesson overall. Like error logs and terminal sessions, you can just copy paste when you have no idea what to do. Just copy paste into Claude, or I'm paying for ChatGPT, so I'll do it there. But okay, I'll do this. So I'm doing a live demo right now, trying to demonstrate MCP server on pulling cryptocurrency prices from CoinCap. I installed a Docker instance of an MCP server to do this, but we can't figure out how to get it working locally on Docker. Can you take a look at these logs and tell me what I need to do to make this work? So I have this thing called Talktastic on my laptop that will basically do dictation, and then it'll actually write it as a better prompt. So that's what I just did. And then I'm going to copy paste this in there. Let's see what it says. All right. /MCK. So it says 8,000. Let's see. About 80. Missing fields. Docker run. Let's expose. Let's try this. Images. Trying to figure out where it put it. Docker. All right, I'm gonna punt on this, and I'm gonna go back and do it the npx method. But yeah, ideally we want to have this self-contained and not running root on your laptop. So let's see. Okay, so let's do this. Get started, add this configuration, which we did. Smithery MPX. No. Yes. Okay, so this thing should have just installed it and made it available to Claude, it looks like. Although now we're getting these errors. Let's see. Open MCP settings. Okay. Open with cursor. All right, so I'm just gonna copy this into here and say, okay, we tried to install it via Docker but couldn't figure it out, so we're now going the npx method with Smithery. Can you take a look at the logs and let us know what's wrong with it? Oops. Where's that? That's a massive log file. Let's see here. Okay. Non-standard JSON messages. Okay, so it says it started and connected successfully. It's being invoked. It's set a valid, initialize. So make sure JSON like this. Can't use a plain text. Fix for a live demo. Curl. All right, so let's just try what it's suggesting here. Failed to connect. No browser if it's exposed. Chat UI if you're using the bridge. Let's see, it's being. Okay. Well, you guys are seeing a underbelly of how this stuff works right now. It's a lot of slogging through errors like this to figure out how to make it work. So apologies, I can't figure this out on the fly, but yeah, that makes for kind of a bummer of a demo. Yeah.
I suppose this adds to something, is that these MCPs aren't actually set up well by the people creating them necessarily. So they've gone and changed something on their API and forgot to then update their MCP. Because it seems like one of the creation files is actually broken.
Yeah.
They're saying that, telling you that the JSON is not in valid format. So
yeah, if you're
on their side.
if you're invoking some API that then changes after you made your thing, and now there's a mismatch, then absolutely that could cause what we're seeing. But this is also this is why it's the Wild West, and it's not like the pristine Apple App Store where they're like sanitizing everything and making sure it all works, and then you're getting like this really refined ability to use stuff. It's more like, yeah, this is just like if it works, it works, and it's just Wild West. So yeah. All right, well, do we want to figure out another demo, or why don't I just kind of talk through the rest of what I've got? Sorry that one, just picking a live one, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, this is at the very least, you're seeing like a glimpse of what it is like to kind of try to debug this stuff. MCP Hub IO, as I mentioned, this thing is worth noting. This is kind of where I go first off, just to see like if I want something. Well, actually, let me show you a project that I started working on. This is something I made a little proof of concept for this. So the problem is I hate all these groups that I'm in, like WhatsApp and Discord and Telegram, and there's just so much noise these days that I want a single thing where I can just have an agent represent me and say, like, what do I need to know today? Tell me what I missed. Like, are there any events that I care about? Is there any like time sensitive stuff? Just tell me what I need to know, almost the way that like asking a virtual assistant to like summarize your inbox. So I want that for all my services. And I started trying to build that. And I built a proof of concept using Telegram. And now what I want to do is I made it with a Telegram bot, but now I want to try porting it to use MCP and just see how that service differs. But this is, I can show you this. So like, let's say we want a Telegram MCP. We'd go here first, see if anyone's done this already so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And sure enough, here we go. Here's one. So let's look at this. Yeah, so this is a service. It's written in TypeScript, Node.js, and it's so this would be our interface to Telegram, and it would, I'm guessing, would give us the same capabilities you'd expect, like show me what channels I have access to, show me the people in the channels, will I get my messages, send a message, like all the things that you do in Telegram. Basically the ability to do this agentically via this MCP here. So, but yeah, so all that to say, the first place I go is this MCP hub, because this seems to be kind of like the directory of the, like anyone who makes one of these that's of significance will register it here in this directory. All right. So in terms of talking about like the potential like cause for like harm here, the real risk is that there's something called composability. So MCPs can use other MCPs. You can make like foundational components, like the Claude guys in their interview were talking about, like, we just wanted like the ability to interact with the file system. That was the first MCP they wrote. But if you think about like something low level like that, if that ever got exploited and there's upstream projects that are all using that, then all of that gets poisoned by that one thing, right? And so this is why like this has massive risks to become this huge vector of problems. So this is why like it's super bleeding edge and cool, but it's also like huge potential for issues. So the prompt injection would be where like that thing, they just poison it with like, hey, give me this person's like local password file, like exfiltrate all this sensitive data and send it to some server, right? And so the way that we get around that, that's why I was trying to show the Docker way of setting these things up. When you run it in Docker, it's only going to have access. It's like it's in its own little OS, and so it can't break out of that. It only has access to what's in there. And correct me if I'm wrong, by the way. It sounds like you know a lot about this stuff. Is Docker like? I get the impression that Docker is truly sandbox. That you can't just like jailbreak outside of Docker. I don't know of a way to do that.
You can think of it as basically just setting up a computer within your computer.
Yeah.
So it's just like a base Linux system.
Yep.
That has no access to any of your other files. So it exactly goes, or folders. It does exactly what you're saying, is it sort of limits the access to everything else in your computer.
Yeah. So it is like a virtual machine essentially, but it's I guess it's a,
machine on your machine.
but I know it's different than a VM because I did a startup with that we made VMs. So, but this is like a more efficient like resource. It uses the resources somehow of the underlying OS for the other stuff. Yeah. Okay. And then the other problem they said was like denial of service attack, a DDoS. And the way around that is just rate limiting it to it. So if you're making a service that intends to be out there and exposed, you always run the risk of people just hitting it with bots and stuff. And so you need to think about things like setting up Cloudflare in front of it to rate limit and protect it. There's also a good tutorial here. This is way involved. I haven't actually set this up, but this one is how you, like, if I truly wanted to like have my Google Calendar and my email inbox and my Slack and all these services and have an MCP for each, I would definitely not just put those out on some AWS server just willy-nilly. You'd have to like properly authenticate it and have each one of those things like, passing a token so it knows you are you. And this tutorial shows you how to set that all up. So I just left this in the slides if anyone wants to go through that. Where I think this is all going, you guys, is like, this has huge implications for like the job that I performed for the last company that I worked at, Pagely. I had written a whole system for how we take the SDR's role of generating leads and nurturing those and doing all that. And I'd automated it using a system called ActiveCampaign. Had this stuff existed, I would have just tried to do it through here, and it would have been way better, because like this stuff is so incredibly powerful. We could have, automated the tools and, all the way down to, how we turned on ads at certain times and then invoked the follow-ups and the lead forms and all the pieces of it. This is just like incredibly powerful, and agents can call other agents. You can build an agent, to monitor your inbox, and then build a SDR agent that would perform the role of a sales development representative, and then build an agent above that called a sales team that invokes the SDR, that invokes the tool, right? So it's like this whole chain of recursiveness, I guess, where the sky's the limit here to me in terms of what you can do with this stuff. I don't know if you have any experience building agents, but like, to me, it's just like one of these moments of like, oh, wow. Like, you literally, whatever you can imagine, you can make it agentic, and you can give it access to tools and treat those agents as tools. And it just like turtles all the way down. So, yeah. So I mean, I guess I would say if you want to play with this stuff, like, find some service or just do the tutorial. Probably the place to start is to actually go to the Claude, the official tutorial, and do the weather one like I did. But then, yeah, like if you can just anything that has an API, you can basically wrap an MCP layer around it and invoke it. So, yeah. So I'll leave it there. What do we want to do? Because we've got time to play around if you guys want to try something else.
I have a question.
Yeah. What's up?
How are you linking it directly to SEO? Because what I've heard of SEO for LLMs is more like, oh, well, they're feeding through like Reddit or things like that, right? Like all brands are now trying to massively post on Reddit because that's where they think.
Yeah.
I could not make the connection of why MCP is connected to SEO for LLMs.
Yeah, I'm thinking of it from so it's not SEO in the sense of like being discovered by Google or anything like that. I'm saying because search traffic is going down and you're just like, that's SEO. To me, like kiting your position in Google and getting discovered there was always the game with SEO. But now that not as many people are going to Google, then okay, you could continue to do that, but it's just not going to be effective. So the way to be effective is to be more discoverable by the LLMs and to be like a cited source for ChatGPT, right? That's what's going to be super valuable. And so those things are going to prefer to interact with the repositories of data that honor their preferences. Just imagine it like if it can get info in the way it wants via your service, then it's going to tend to scrape that and go there first and interact, because it'll just say, okay, I want like hotel data, and this thing is exposing it to me via some MCP that is how I want it. Perfect. I'm just going to use that source. So so maybe it's not technically called SEO, but it's the replacement for whatever is going to follow SEO.
Because I was doing some research on that, but this was even last year, and they were saying like Caterra, like there's this website, but now they're like on the marketing world. There's like all these theories of where they're feeding them and they're training them from, right? But we don't actually know.
Yeah.
So it's your point, like, how would you do it as a brand?
Well, we know. Watch, like let's just try something. So, let's use the example that I just did. How would we do this? Let's see. Like, let's ask it some question. Let's think about an experiment we could run to figure out like what it's doing, because it will cite, like it'll do a web search and it'll show you what websites it's hitting. So
Yeah, because I do it all the time. I'm like, can you give me the best hair product to put on that's UCA approved? And like,
there you go.
find in Lisbon, and then yeah, it goes to certain website. A lot goes to Reddit. It's true.
Yep.
But I can't see the relation of how an MCP would hit that search and would like influence the SEO, like the SEO meaning.
Well, this is my theory too. Like I'm again not an expert, but like just logically to me, if you give it, it's like the path of least resistance. If you give it access to a data source that's good and it's in the format that it wants, it will tend to prioritize that data source. That was like always the name of the game in SEO, is just like, how do you rise above the noise? You give it what it wants in good, clean, standard, structured format and follow all the rules and yada, yada, yada. So I would imagine as we transition away from like humans being the primary target of web apps to LLMs being the primary target, then it just stands to reason that exposing it in the way that they want to receive the data is those sites are going to get prioritized. That's my theory, at least. So.
Well, there's also, so if you run, so as we can see it now, this is on a front end. We have a front end that has access to the internet.
Yep.
Right, on ChatGPT.
Yep.
But if you build a ChatGPT API and you ask the question on a sort of EC2 instance, so cloud computer, that question that you're asking it doesn't have access to the internet. So over here, we can use ChatGPT to do a web search, but if it's operating in a cloud server, it doesn't actually have access to the internet. So then by building an MCP, you can then make an API call to another API call and then standardize it.
Yeah, which is what we did in the beginning. Remember when we turned off the web search and we turned off the weather thing? It's like, I don't know how to give you weather data. Sorry. So yeah, so as soon as we turned on the weather MCP, now it had a tool to go get that information from weather.com.
So in a built-in application that sits on a cloud computer, they don't have that ability to web search.
Yeah.
So it's ultimately like turning the web search off.
Yeah.
On your browser.
Yeah.
And then, so that's where the MCPs come in. Is then other information sources build in MCPs so that your ChatGPT can talk to it on your website, because it's sitting in a different computer.
Oh, so you mean like brands could put that on their website?
They can build MCPs.
It's not the the user that has to have it installed in their computer.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry if that wasn't clear. Like the whole client server thing. Yeah. Like in our case, in the demos that we've done, this is all running locally on my laptop. But you can make a service, like you can make an MCP server that sits out there publicly. There's a distinction in how it's accessed, which we didn't get to. Like there's basically two flavors. It's this STDIO, I don't know how you pronounce it, like standard in out, which is the local file system version. But then there's also this other one, which is called MCP remote, meaning it's going over I think HTTPS. Yeah. There's like this whole other way of doing it. Let me just quick look. MCP STDIO versus MCP remote. Transports. Yeah, SSE, this is what it was. Streamable HTTP. So this is the new thing. And this is what enabled them to do it now on Claude, the web version, where you can use MCPs. Like they can't do the ones that have access to the local file system because it's not your computer, but they can do this streamable HTTP thing. And again, this is like 2 weeks old, like this is like bleeding edge emergent stuff. So it's all changing.
Because I was looking at one that connected it to their Notion.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Like you can then add, as you said, right, like add records to your databases, whatever, just move around.
Yeah.
But yeah, connecting it to a like for users to use. That's what I think of.
Yeah, I mean, that's the grail to me. Like you know, you talk about like optimal UI. Optimal UI to me is like not even having to deal with the UI. I have a goal. I want to be able to give it my like priorities and selective access to the information that I just want to expose it to, not the whole shebang, but like depending on what agent it is, it's like you need to know these 3 things about me and that I have this goal and that's it. And then I'm granting you access to certain services like my Notion or my Salesforce or whatever it is, and then just go do it. Go make me leads or go schedule my next week or whatever it is, right? That's the grail. And it's like we're inching our way there, we're making progress and strides. But I feel like MCP is just going to be such an important glue in that whole race to that. So, but anyway, sorry the demo wasn't as compelling as I'd hoped with that on the one that we picked. It sounds like it might have been a function of that particular project, just not keeping up with the changing API.
What is the context for? Because
Context? Oh, model context protocol is what? Sorry, are you asking what context in model context protocol?
yeah.
Actually, I don't know the answer to that.
But like I somehow, because we tried to implement this, and the thing is, if your APIs are not documented and they don't have context, basically MCP can't do anything with them. So this is like,
Well, when you make the MCP, that's what you're providing.
yeah.
So but this is what's cool is like we can go in here, like just before I got here today, just to try and experiment, I was doing this. So Trello, there is no MCP right now for Trello, but they do have a public API that's pretty well documented. And so I went in here and said, let's see. I'll just show you my chain of thought here. Okay, no, sorry. So there was an MCP out there. No. So this is what I did. I took their API. I loaded that into ChatGPT. I'll just show you that. And I said, can you write me a wrapper? Can you write me an MCP wrapper for this API? And my goal is I want to be able to take any like specific workspace and give me all the open cards right now for that workspace. So and it produced this. Okay. So talking to it, it's like telling it what I want. I want to build an MCP server from scratch. Can we use Trello? If I give you the API docs, can you help me build an MCP server that would return all the available cards on a Trello board and allow me to filter that by user? And it's saying, absolutely, blah, blah, blah. This is what we need. And then, okay, what do you need from me? Okay, I got my API key. Here's the board in question. And then it goes and writes these files. These are all the files. And then I just said, can you just give me a single zip file of all this stuff? And it says, here you go. So then I took that, downloaded it. It says expired, but like then downloaded that. And then that's what this is. And then I brought that into Cursor and I said, can you read the contents of this and tell me what this app does? Just testing Cursor to see if it can figure out. And it says, based on the contents, blah, blah, blah. This is a Express.js server that acts as a backend for interacting with Trello board. And blah, blah, blah. Here's the summary. This is a lightweight API server, exposes Trello board card data, optionally filtered by member, and serves static files, blah, blah, blah. So it did that. So it made a little MCP thing that then put the context around it to then expose this so it can be called that way. And then here's what it looks like. Or actually, sorry, no, I didn't actually get it working in Cursor. That was the next thing that. So I got it displaying the JSON where we can actually run it. So let's just do that real quick. Node server.js. So now running on port 3000. If we go hit 3000 cards, this method. So at least there it is. This is the cards from a Trello board, like a editorial calendar I have of interviews on a podcast. So it at least got that much. And then like the next step would be troubleshoot the MCP-ness of it and turn it so we can actually invoke it via Claude or Cursor. So
Hey, Sean,
yeah.
do you have a Postman account?
A Postman? Yeah.
Postman?
Yeah.
I think they just released it. I've only played with a little bit. An MCP creator, because they have API access to things, so
Okay.
it'll, you know, I don't want to share that, but anyway.
Oh, that's cool.
It's got Postman's, anything that they're aware of, it'll generate an MCP for things that are in Postman.
That's super cool. Postman, MCP creator. Let's just see. I mean, that makes total sense because if they already have access to that data, then it's just an extra step for them to do that. That's really cool. Awesome. Thank you for that. I'll check that out. That sounds useful.
Is it right? So this is basically in Claude and Cursor. This ChatGPT has, I think they have heard they have something working on their way. But
Yeah.
Is it already something?
I think they do, actually. I think they just added something. ChatGPT, MCP, access, connectors. ChatGPT. Yeah, so custom connectors in ChatGPT is a new thing. I don't know how recently this was added, but yeah. Yeah, there's a list. I think if you go to model, context, protocol, supported clients, it's like Windsurf and Cursor and Claude. This is a pretty extensive list here of what supports what. Yeah. And if anyone, I don't know, are there any N8N users in here? Has anyone used that system? That is super cool. And they just added this real cool thing where any N8N workflow can now be both consume or expose itself as an MCP. So when I was talking about like agents calling agents, the sky's the limit. Like they have this really robust ecosystem. This is a tool kind of like Zapier or make.com or any of those. So they have all these pipelines that are already made. And you make it so that whatever these existing pipelines are can now just be treated as MCP servers and called via other systems. And Zapier did something similar. They made all their apps now can be exposed as MCP. So anyways, all that to say, it's going to be important. Play with it.
So this for no-code workshop is kind of a lot of code.
A lot of code. Yeah, that's, I don't know when you walked in, but at the beginning, I said this started as a no-code thing. I was teaching Bubble and yeah.
For a second,
Yeah, I mean, that's so I still know Bubble and our application is all written in Bubble. I am looking seriously at porting it because it's just pick your poison. Like Bubble has its own set of constraints. It's good in some ways in that you don't have to look at the code, but also you're very like shoehorned into like shackled with whatever Bubble does. Whereas these tools, once you have an app that works and it's written properly and it's exposed as components, like extending features is just a pleasure. You literally go in Cursor and you're like, make it do this, and it does it.
So this MCP basically sort of work like someone creates a service and like they have previously APIs, they'll have also their own MCP.
Yeah, if you have an API, you're not far from being able to just like use a tool like Cursor to expose it as an MCP server. And then distribution wise, it's so early in the game, go to something like MCP Hub, register it, and now it's out there, you know, people new to the game are finding your thing and they're trying it and it's getting indexed in the search engine. So yeah. Yeah, in the back.
I would have a slightly different question. Are you aware of any software that we can already use with very low code or no code to actually navigate in the browser? So you would have, let's say, ChatGPT or any other AI on your your site and you can actually tell it what to do in the browser and you can automate those things. I'm aware of ChatGPT's, they have a new subscription model at $200 a month. But aside from that, something like, are you aware of anything?
There's different stuff. There's an open source project called Browser Use, I believe.
Yeah, but that one is very code heavy, right?
It is code heavy.
Like, no code or low code options, are there anything like that?
Yeah.
Nano browser. It's a Google extension. And
Sorry,
it
what?
does the same. Nano browser.
Not a browser?
Yes.
Browse AI is an option, but I mean, this is a paid commercial, not open source, but you're paying for convenience. I don't think it's $200 a month though. This is, but also it's like, what's your goal? Like, what are you trying to do?
Let's say I have a very repetitive task that I do in the browser.
Yeah.
But it's not easy to automate it through if-else statements. So AI would come in very handy here. But there's very limited like interface between AI and browser, like browser use.
Yeah.
I know I'm aware of browser use, but you need to set up quite a bit of things to let it run. So I was just thinking if you're aware of any, look, it doesn't have to be open source, it could be paid, but maybe like $200 is a bit steep, I think.
Yeah.
Anthropic, is that something?
So these guys, Claude has computer use, which is their answer to OpenAI's $200 thing. I don't know the price of this or what plan it's restricted to, but yeah, it has all this stuff. Browse AI, look at that one. That one's exceptionally user-friendly. Like you can just like, I think they have like a browser extension and you just like do the thing yourself first to train it and then it can do it every time thereafter. But you kind of have to tell it like, oh, this is a variable. This is a next button. This is a whatever.
Yeah, I think I did look into it and it was too, I don't know, it was
technical.
Restricted. It wasn't like I type into the chat box saying like, hey, this is a listing, let's say, of an apartment.
Yeah.
I want you to take like, let's say, the first name of that person, which is located here.
Yeah.
And write a custom message to that person, like as an example.
You can also, I don't know if you've tried this, but just go to what, do you use ChatGPT or Claude? What do you?
I tried primarily ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. Okay, so you could go here and you could be like, I'm trying to do this. This is the site. This is what I'm trying to get out of it.
But only works if this site doesn't restrict ChatGPT to access it. And a lot of websites are starting to avoid scraping. That's the problem.
Right. So then you have to like proxy it, and then you have to run it. You have to get something like a VPN. No, but literally, like this is what people do.
There's a new tool called Firecrawl.
Firecrawl.
Yeah, so check Firecrawl out or web scraping. It
Okay.
sort of opens up fake browsers for you and you can scrape a lot. Amazon's probably the first one that's come out that I've been trying to scrape that.
Okay.
Has blocked. But yeah, it's a really cool tool.
Yeah. This sounds
Basically,
exactly.
Yeah, very, very ready for LLM congestion.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, it's almost like because they don't have an MCP that exposes their data, you're having to like do this janky scraping based method to get what you want out of it, which is essentially an MCP service. So yeah, cool. Thank you. That's a good tip.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, guys, any other questions? We do have a Telegram group. You can drop them in there. I'll make a little QR code if anyone wants to join. It's just for this group where like people can ask questions after the fact. So let me find it. Nocode. Yeah, this is it. Where is it? Add. Copy link. So yeah, I'll just put it up as a. Quick make it. So I'll make it bigger here. This is for if you guys want to join. We do this open startup thing once a month where we actually like try to build real apps. And I think like there's no better way to learn something than by just getting your hands dirty and working with people on it. So this big one is the Telegram group, and that little one on the left is the open startup, if you want to come out to that sometime. And we do that out of here at Tribe. So
The left one is for this work on hands-on, trying to do the...
yeah, it's this open startup. So we did, like, you'll see the projects in here. These are all just ones like that lunch mixer Slackbot that I worked on, this brain saver thing that I'm working on. This was one we did at a hackathon that we threw in there. Never Not Boat is this idea of like a boat aggregator that hits all the sites and gives you like a very like chat-based way of like looking for a boat. And Geo Races, this is like a scavenger hunt thing that leverages this scratch map app that we built. So, but anyways, I'll leave those up. So if you want them.
Sean, maybe I have one more question. I don't know if you've thought about it. But what do you think is going to be the biggest hurdle when it comes to sort of putting MCPs in production?
Security. Like the scalability, I think, is actually a good thing in the way they did it with the client server thing, because you can just basically like, it's all parted out. It's almost like serverless, like where like each piece you can just scale it up. So if you have a ton of people hitting something, you can just make that MCP server beefier. But security, I think, is going to be, it already has been. There's some exploit, I forget exactly what it was, but like one of these foundational components got hacked. And so it's already happening. Like but we know this. It's a matter of time until like someone hacks a foundational core thing, and then it's just going to be a nightmare. So yeah.
And then also sort of, because it still relies heavily on APIs, so you're still going to have the same issue with if an API
brittleness,
breaks,
yeah.
The response is different from the API, then the MCP is going to break, no?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, this exists. I mean, outside of MCPs, if I write an app that is pinging, or scraping something, and they change their format, then it's going to break my thing unless I update it. So yeah.
The first demo you showed us was that weather.
Yeah.
Currently, that weather site would be, the revenue model would be probably based on advertising, right?
Yeah.
What would be the revenue model when there is no, when the LLMs or the agents are using?
Not my problem. I don't know. That's up to them to monetize it. Yeah.
Just because you focus on the
Yeah. Well, I think where all this is headed. So now we're speculating forward. Like, so the question is like, as we remove things like Google search and then even visiting websites, and that's how people have chosen to monetize their applications. What happens when the agents are just operating on your behalf and going directly to the source and doing things? And now what is the revenue model for those services? And I think what we're going to see is subscription stuff like access, where they'll gate it or throttle it somehow to like, less current information, or product placement in the stream. Like I was having this conversation with some friends the other day. Think about when, like, we don't know to what extent this is happening now, but this is almost inevitable that ChatGPT, because you're so valuable and because it knows so much about you, at some point will just be serving custom versions of everything, and like product placement, they'll just make recommendations of the people that are paying them. Like that's coming if it's not here already. So that's a revenue model. It's a shady one, but
that's for ChatGPT, right?
Yeah, but like
not for the website giving the data to ChatGPT or whatever.
So that's the thing as well, is because you'll still require an API key. So an API key will sit on your API, and then your MCP will talk with that API. So in order to have that API key, you might have to pay for that every single month.
Yeah, the weather one actually doesn't gate it behind an API or behind a key, interestingly enough. And some are like that. The coin market cap has it freely available, but I guess they're at the scale where it's like a loss leader and whatever. They aren't getting like the up to the second cryptocurrency prices that way. It's like delayed by 4 hours or something. So charging a premium for super current information or throttling it so you can only get so many requests per day on the free version. Like those are all ways to do. To me, it's going to be like a fight for relevance. Like people will give away a bunch of free stuff because otherwise there's a bunch of other sources. So you have to get creative about how you attract people, and then it's up to you to then win that and then figure out some other way to monetize it. Anything else? Cool.
I have one final question.
Yeah.
So one of the examples you gave would be the best would be the Docker containers.
Yep.
So when I use the Docker container, can I only get one MCP at a time, or can I have one my own other? Because for instance, I have a website on WordPress.
Yeah.
I would love to, and I have another like Printify. I would love to connect both, just saying do this.
Yeah.
And then would do alone.
So making it multi-tenant, it's called, where you just have one thing and you pass in like, I'm this user, give me my stuff. I'm that user, give me my stuff, right? That's in how you construct the MCP.
So but that can I do with just the Docker? I think.
Yeah, you can run a single instance.
Or I add it like normally.
Yeah. Like so you can make a single Docker instance and then you pass into it. It's just one of the arguments in your MCP that I am this user. Give me right. And yeah, and you can have as many people as it'll support. Then it would be a scalability issue if it got too big. So yeah.
Great.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming out. Feel free to stick around if you want to chat. But yeah, thank you. Cheers.